Hey guys, this is Mitch from BoardCo. Today I'm going to give you a rundown on how to pick the right style of wake surf board or the right model of board for the wave that you are going to be riding on. All right, so today I'm going to give you a rundown on different wake surf boards and why they're going to work better or worse or whatever for the kind of boat that you're riding behind, the size, the shape of the surf wave that you are going to be riding on. Now, the first thing I want to talk about here is wave dynamics of a different boat. So there's two different components that we can talk about: the size of the wave and the shape of the wave. Now, one of the things we talk about, or well, if you ever talk to one of our reps here at BoardCo, one of the very first things that you'll be asked is, what boat are you surfing behind? And the reason why we're asking that question is to get a gauge of what size of surf wave we're riding on, what shape of surf wave we're riding on. The second question that we're gonna ask that ties right into it is, what is gonna be the weight range of the people that are gonna be on the board? So as an example, if you're riding on a really small wave, but you're a small rider, you can get away with a little bit smaller board. If you're a big guy riding on a small wave, you're gonna need a lot of help and need a big board. But at the same time, if you're a smaller rider on a big giant wave, you really have almost unlimited options, but you may want to tend towards a board that isn't ultra fast because you don't need that additional speed. So those are two, I would argue, the two most important components when deciding on what wake surf board is, number one, what wave are you going to ride on? And number two, who is going to be riding on the board? Is it going to have a really big person, a really small person, or something in between, or just you that are going to be riding on that wave? Now, first one, talking about wave dynamics. Now, we kind of laugh a little bit here when we're talking to people, because a lot of people will say something along the lines of, oh, my wave is awesome, my wave is huge. When we're talking about surf waves, well, let me qualify a couple things, because this is important to know from a general standpoint what type of a wave you're surfing on. Now, this is not saying anyway knocking anybody's boat down or the way you've got it set up. It's just a main way of trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, using the same vocabulary to give you the right kind of information, so you don't end up making a bad decision on a board because you don't have the full information that you need. So if you've got an older style V-Tribe boat, let's say a 2011 and older, and you're not running a bunch of additional customized setup. And when I say customized, I mean putting a surf shaper on the side, putting a bunch of additional weight, doing anything like that. You are, generally speaking, going to be dealing with a little bit smaller wave. Doesn't mean it's super small. Super small would be an example of like a direct drive ski boat. That would be a really small wave. Smaller wave is going to be something that is like an older style boat that you haven't done a bunch of customization to. A medium-sized wave is going to be something that you have, like an older boat that you've done some customization to, or a lot of the newer style boats that you haven't done a lot of additional work with. So an example of that would be like a Moomba or an Axis or Malibu that doesn't have plug-and-play bags in the rear lockers. A Nautique GS series. A lot of the different crossover style boats, a lot of the Mastercrafts like an NXT or an XT series that you haven't done a lot of customization with. Those boats are going to be in the classification of more of like a medium-sized wave. Now, if you go to a large wave, that's moving into the realm of some things like a Malibu with additional plug-and-play bags in the rear locker and deploying the wedge. A Nautique G23 or G25 series. Any of the Centurion FI series boats. If something like a Supra, or like an SE, an SA, and SL, something like that. Those ones are going to be in the classification of large waves. And then there's kind of another subclass that's out here, which is if you've got your wave absolutely dialed, 100% optimized, that would be something like if you're running a Centurion RI just out of the box, or if you're running like a Supra SE or SA or SL that you're adding a bunch of additional weight to. Another boat that would probably throw in that class would be like a a Malibu M240 or a G23 Paragon, but would probably be close in that same class if you do some customization. Those are just going to be boats that you're not limited necessarily by the wave capabilities. It's going to be just picking the right board for the right person that's going to be behind it. So the reason I want to identify those classifications is they're going to make a difference based on what size of board that you want to pick, as well as just the overall shape and model of the board as well. Now, generally speaking, when you're going to, you have two components, the size of the wave and the size of the rider. When you have a smaller wave or a bigger rider, you're going to need more surface area, number one, and number two, you're going to need a board that has more speed. So an example of this is I've got two boards right here. So this is a Hyperlite Broadcast right here on my right and a Phase 5 Model X here on my left. You can see they're both sitting on the ground. The Broadcast is, from what you can tell, a much larger board. So it's got more surface area because it's not just longer, it's wider. But these two boards will support the same weight range of rider. In fact, arguably, the Phase 5 Model X right here will actually support a larger rider than will the Broadcast. Now, the reason for that is because the Model X is a higher end construction. It's a carbon fiber board that isn't going to flex and move, and it has a super fast speed line. So it's going to it has almost zero rocker running across it, means it's going to be ultra fast moving across the water. So on a small wave, this is an awesome board. It's one of the most ideal ones you can get. Super flat rocker line, decent size, doesn't necessarily have to be super big, but a higher end construction. So if you're dealing with a small, super small, or even medium sized wave, this board like this is going to be awesome. You can spend a little extra and get a nicer board, and it's going to be the equivalent of putting a serious upgrade on the wave of your boat for what you'll be able to get out of it. So that's component number one. Now, this will also work for bigger guys, but you will need to have a decent wave when you're getting behind it. When I say bigger guys, I'm talking, we'll say like 220 plus as far as what we're talking about with weight. We go into a little different category when you start going up to like 300 plus, which we can cover in just a second. But that's kind of number one. So if you're dealing with bigger guys on a medium-sized wave, something like this will do great. Now, as well as a smaller wave. So speed is more important on a smaller wave. Meanwhile, on the other end, if you go to a bigger person riding on it, more volume is going to help. So this right here is a Phase 5 Doctor. You see that lengthwise, these two boards are about the same, but when you look at the perimeter profile, whether you're looking at the tail or at the nose or through the middle of the board, this board is obviously a lot bigger. It's got a lot more surface area. So that extra surface area is going to be a lot more that a bigger guy can lean on, and he can lean forward, and he can have more surface area to support him. He's not going to sink the board down in too deep. The other component is the volume. In other words, how thick the board is, how much volume it has to it. The more volume, the higher it's going to ride in the water, and the more weight it is going to support. So when you go to a board that's a little higher volume like this, it's going to support bigger riders a little bit better. So if you got a medium-sized wave or even to a large-sized wave and a bigger rider, more volume can be a really good thing. There is a difference of this is a surf style board. The Phase 5 Model X is a hybrid towards skim style board. So that's another factor. Check out our video on board styles if you want a good idea of how that's going to go. Now, as I mentioned, if you've got really big riders and or a smaller wave or a medium wave, you're going to kind of need help on both ends of the spectrum. You're going to need a board that's fast and a board that's got a lot of volume. This board right here at the Doctor is one of the best ones in the business for it. It's got a really flat rocker line. It's going to have a lot of speed. It's also got a lot of volume. It's also got a lot of surface area. It's designed as a higher performance big guy board. There's other boards that are out there that fit that same mix, like a Phase 5 Kong is another great one. But the idea is you just want more surface area, more speed, more everything, because you're going to need all the help you can get. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is getting the board for the right size rider. We have requests regularly of going, hey, I've got my daughter who's 70 pounds and I weigh 210. What's a board that's going to work great for both of us? Well, the answer is that we can give you a board that's going to work not very good for both of you, or we can give you a board that's going to work great for one of you. Realistically, one of the best things you can do is get a board that's going to fit the right dynamics. Now, if you got yourself and one other rider who's 20 pounds apart or 30 pounds apart, you're fine. You'll be great, especially if you got a bigger wave. But if you're dealing with a big weight range of people, you're best to get 2 different boards because it's going to allow the board to work properly. Now let me just explain what I mean by work properly, because this is going to factor in to the size of the rider as well as the size of the wave. The main reason why boards come in different sizes is because it allows the board to ride at the proper place in the water. In other words, imagine the water line of the board. Imagine it sits right here at the bottom of the board right there. Imagine it sitting about 1/4 of an inch above the rail of the board. That's about where you want it to sit when it's gliding through the water when you're riding on it. If you've got a really heavy rider, that's gonna move it from a 1/4 inch up to, let's say, 1/2 an inch up. That means the board's gonna be sitting way deep in the water. It's gonna get kind of bogged down. That's not only going to make it really slow, meaning that it's going to just drag and it's gonna end up falling out the back. You're not gonna get the speed you need. The other thing is it means the board isn't gonna maneuver and ride the way it should. By the same token, if you get a rider that's too light on a board, so let's say it goes from here with a 1/4 inch up to right at the very bottom edge of the board's gonna be floating too high on the water, meaning the board's not gonna have traction and maneuverability. You're not gonna be able to control it very well. This is something that we see regularly when you see kids jumping on adult boards and trying to ride on them. It's not that the board can't push them. It's not even that they can't stand on the board and they feel unstable. It's that they can't control anything because the board's riding too high in the water, so when they lean to move it, the board's not actually down in the water to move. It just sits right there at the top, and it makes it really skatey, it slides, it just doesn't give it the right control and the right traction that you need. So having a board that fits the right range of rider is going to be a great pick, because you're not only gonna be able to stay on the wave, you're gonna be able to do so much more when you're on the wave. You're gonna have better maneuverability, better control, you're gonna have just an overall better experience. Okay, last thing I wanted to talk about here was the style of board and how it's going to best work for your particular wave. If you've got a big wave, then you're going to have a large range of options. You can ride on just about anything. If you've got a wave that can be really easily configured with something like a Centurion, you can go from a mellow wave to a steep wave, so you can ride pretty much any board that's out there. There are, however, some certain boats that are going to naturally create a much steeper wave, or there's going to be boats that create a much smaller wave. So an example of steeper wave would be something like if you're riding on a Nautique G series boat, or if you're riding on a Malibu and you're using the wedge quite a bit. That's going to create a wave that's going to be really fairly steep, and there's no way of mellowing it out without really shrinking the size and either taking out a whole bunch of ballast or, in the case of Malibu, just completely eliminating the wedge entirely. So if you're riding on a really steep wave, a surf style board, something like a liquid force pod that's got big deep fins, is going to work a little bit better. Now you can ride a skim style board on a steep wave, but sometimes if you got a really steep wave and a smaller rider, it's tough to ride a skim style board. So if people are going, hey, what style board should I go to on my boat? If you're riding a really steep wave, going to a surf style board may be a better pick. Now, by the same token, if you're going to be riding, if you have a wave that's really small, like if you've got an older style boat, oftentimes a skim style board, something like a hammerhead, is going to do a fantastic job. The reason why is because skim style boards are really fast and they don't require a big wave to be able to generate a lot of tail push to activate the fins. So a skim style board is going to deal much better with a smaller wave than a surf style board will. In fact, my opinion is some of the higher end surf style boards, i.e. like a Soulcraft or a Varial from Hyperlite or a Phase 5 Phantom, something along those lines. If you're riding a really small wave, it's going to be really hard to have a great time on that board on your small wave. By the same token though, I mean, I've been out on like 2006 boats with Drew Daniello, one of the best riders in the world, who's doing backside big spins, giant tricks, going off huge, riding a skim style board. And the reason why is because the wave itself, as long as it's not too radically steep, is not as important on a skim board. So if you've got a small wave, you want to upgrade your riding and move to the next level, skim style is probably going to be what you're limited to really amplify it, unless you're going to upgrade your surf wave. So hope this has been really helpful. If you'd like any particular guidance in picking anything out or getting information about about boards, or even like how to upgrade your wave, feel free to reach out to our guys at BoardCo. We're happy to help you out and give you the info that you need. Hope this has been really helpful in pointing you in the right direction with getting the right type of setup with a board. If you got any questions, reach out to us, let us know. Thanks a ton. Keep being awesome, and we'll talk to you later. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. If you want to check out more videos like we have, click the subscribe button below and check out the other videos on our channel. We really love the opportunity to be able to share our knowledge and our love of water sports and all the stuff we have going on with you guys. So if you give us a thumbs up, click the bell, click subscribe, and everything else, we would appreciate it a ton, and we can keep you informed. Thanks a ton. We'll see you later.